I've seen them, he said.
His angels? I asked.
Yeah.
And what are they like?
I don't know.
He paused. His eyes were fixed on the floor as if he was looking for the right words in the ground between us.
They're quite unlike anything else.
He fell silent once more.
Exacting. Swift. Altogether a challenge to behold. Truly worthy of the title.
He looked up at me when he said that, as if finally satisfied to have found the right description. Someone once said that to me. They told me angels have always been repulsive, uneasy for us to witness. It separates them from us, a reminder of their divine purpose. I was now looking at the floor, hoping that what I'd said wasn't blasphemy. More silent seconds passed. I began idly drawing in the dirt on the floor. They say there are new ones. New angels, I said, staring into a spiral I'd carved in the dust.
They've said many things in my time,
he replied grimly. Do you not believe them?
I do. What vexes me, though, is that no matter what they say, the war never seems to draw closer to an end. There's always another sortie, always another skirmish. Primarch or no Primarch, old angels or new ones. There's always a war for us to weather.
And it truly is hell, I concluded for him, not really thinking about what I said.
I've seen that too,
he growled before I truly finished speaking.
And this is not that.
You've seen
the eye? Yeah. And should have died for it too. If not by the action alone, then by the holy hand of the Inquisition, no less.
But still you stand. My finger was motionless in the dirt, and I stared intently at the battered features of the figure across from me. The longer I stared, the more he really began to appear as if he truly had looked upon the eye, seen the twisting horror and untold weirdness of rumour. He breathed deeply, his uniform warping and wrinkling softly in the glow from the fire, and watched in awe as unknowable memories flickered in glimmers across his pupils.
But still I stand.
Don't you fear they might one day catch you? The Inquisition? They're at least ruthless, if not timely.
I do not. I know that if he wanted me dead, then dead I would be. His hand would have stopped my heart the day I looked upon the fabric of hell, but alas, it passed over me, and I remain to fight again in his honour.
His body looked fatigued, worn out after years of endless service to the throne. Yet his voice was stoic and rang with the determination of one steadfast in purpose and fearful of nothing, save perhaps the obfuscation of his light. Questions I dared not ask spun within my mind, dancing along with the mad patterns of the flames beside us. But I stayed my tongue, eager to hear if he would share any more of his own volition.
I used to turn my head back around every corner. I'd watch for anyone who might come behind me to put an end to my service to the things I've seen. But I've since come to see my survival as a boon, as a thing to be celebrated in the forges of war, as I continue to exact his will by my own means. I was completely surrounded by his words, unable to take my eyes off his expression, amplified by the glow of the fire. I knew more and more with each new crawling second that I beheld a true servant of the Imperium, a true hero of mankind, and I wanted more than anything to follow him to hell, to see it extinguished in his name. I was glad to be so absorbed, saving myself from looking around at the makeshift tomb which the enemy had so helplessly arranged for us. Perhaps hell wasn't to be breached after all. Still, I stayed fixed on his eyes, waiting for more. Words crept their way to my lips. What should we do? I longed to hear how a mind so inspired would plan for us to emerge from our entrapment and once again surge for the heart of our attackers. I don't know. Surely you must have some idea. I don't. I see his salvation as my purpose, as my reason for continuing to fight. But I also see it as his guidance. His will sometimes manifests in unusual ways, requiring that one waits, or that one withdraws. I believe this to be one of those times. I believe he wishes us to wait here with the angel until a sign is made apparent.
I looked to the other side of the fire. The vast ceramite mound lay still, as if inhabited by a corpse, and had it not been for the monitors on its vambrace, we would have guessed indeed that it was. However, faint signs of life showed on the sergeant's armour, indicating to us that the downed gunship had not killed him in its spiralling descent. I had initially counted the three of us lucky, but then the veteran reminded me that we had been protected by him. Several times the great body had shifted, almost imperceptibly. We both jumped to our feet with excitement each time, only for the figure to remain still. His voxcaster crackled when he moved, which was more than could be said of our own, but no voices emerged from it. Below the snapping chorus of the campfire, his armor's reactors softly whirred, keeping alive in us the hope that his silent companion might yet walk again. "What did you see?" It was all I could do not to clamp my hand over my mouth after the words made their way out. There was no response. His eyes remained on the armoured mound, any hope within them hidden behind a layer of exhaustion. Upon hearing my question, I could have sworn that for a split second the light of the fire changed colour, flashing a deep shade of purple which washed instantly over us both.
"Everything,"
he finally said, not taking his eyes off the fallen Marine.
"I saw all that has been and could ever be, united in perpetual collision of sound, horror and colour.
And were you not maddened by the sight?"
I was not.
We ceased talking again for some time. I resumed my mindless drawing in the dirt, and he continued watching the quiet body of the angel. The voxcaster sounded a few more times in the silence, but nothing of import seemed to make its way through. I wondered why the very presence of the Space Marine had not filled me with hope, enraptured me with his inspiration. It hadn't even awakened the fear, the transhuman dread I'd read and heard of before. I suppose that the figure had no more significance to me than the remains of the Thunderhawk now hemming us in on all sides. Had it been complete, operational and in working order, then perhaps I would have found myself overwhelmed by it. But alas, it lay in ruin. Both of them. Had the Space Marine been conscious when we found ourselves trapped, my senses may have been overcome in his presence. Had we witnessed his martial might firsthand, I might have managed to waive the apprehension I held towards our chances of survival. Had he been able to speak to us of the doctrine?
I simply called on his protection.
I'm sorry?
I asked him to avert my eyes, to save me from abhorrent visions of hell.
I see. The distraction of the veteran speaking so suddenly prevented me from falling into the same absorption as before. I like to think I would do the same myself.
But I can still feel it.
He looked away from the sergeant, his eyes resting on me.
I know when the warp's tainted touch is nearby. Its influence has never left. And like his light, it often guides me in times of uncertainty.
Surely you can't... boomed a voice from the heap of armour on the floor.
"The voxcaster,"
he said, springing up and running over the flames towards the Marine.
"Say again, over."
Nothing came back. He tried a few more times to heal, but was unsuccessful. Slowly, he tried removing the unit from the Marine's armour, teasing its various connections from their ports.
"This was a rush job. He must not routinely carry units such as this. He's withdrawing, possibly attempting to arrange an evacuation."
"This is correct."
The same voice thundered. "The voxcaster is not connected," I whispered in the silence that followed.
"Indeed not."
The ground below the head of the Space Marine lit up, glowing in stark contrast to the firelight from behind us. The reactor inside the armour whined loudly, and a massive gauntlet planted itself, fingers splayed in the dirt.
"He rises!"
I exclaimed, jumping on the spot. My restraint had slipped, and I found myself unable to control the sudden rush of joy.
"He lives!"
The veteran remained silent, setting the voxcaster on the ground and stepping back. More whines and growls ricocheted from the walls of our makeshift cave as the holy warrior picked himself up and stood before us, facing the back wall.
"Oh, thank him. Thank him on the throne. We're saved."
I tried to grab my friend and shake him, but he held me still, not taking his eyes off the Marine. I heard the massive frame turn to behold us, and he knelt, bowing his head.
"My lord,"
he said, shutting his eyes. I turned to kneel beside him, but chose to try and steal a glance at the now advancing Colossus. Even with small, reserved steps, the wondrous armour of the angel sent tremors through the ground beneath me. Its every movement was a cascade of mechanical noises, although I gathered from the showers of sparks and unguents which advanced ahead of it that the armour had been damaged somewhat by the crash.
"Rise,"
the Space Marine commanded.
"Are either of you hurt?"
"No, my lord,"
the veteran said, maintaining his tone of reverence. We both stood in unison, and I was able to look upon the angel in his entirety. My heart both soared and sank at the sight of the Marine's panoply. Now at his full height, something in my breast reeled at the inhuman proportions, while my spirit practically sang his praises to the shining Aquila upon the gleaming cuirass. Large scores and dents covered the surface of the armour entire, but it was still impossibly beautiful to me, so much so that my eyes felt burned to look upon it. I could almost feel the prying instruments of the armour penetrate my soul as they struggled to bring themselves to bear in their damaged state. Some part of the massive helm failed, spouting more sparks which rained down upon our shoulders. The Marine raised his hands, each the size of my own breast, and lifted the helm from his head. A vast shaven scalp emerged from the soft seals of the helm and was immediately absorbed into the shadows beyond the reaches of our campfire. Red, angered skin surrounded two augmetic eyes which fixed us with a harsh, uncompromising stare. The Marine dropped his helm on the floor and gritted his teeth, the width of his jaw somehow upsetting, and the odd angle at which it was set left the musculature on one side of his head looking swollen and oversized. Snake-like veins pulsed visibly through his neck, which I remarked were the size of most men's thighs. For several moments, the lenses of the augmetic eyes moved back and forth, I imagined gathering as much data on us as was available to the array of broken equipment which the Marine was forced to work with. We stood silently, waiting for him to give another command.
This one speaks the truth,
He said. His voice was no longer modulated by his armor, but it still reverberated within my chest. Which one? I asked eagerly.
the elder of you both. He speaks of the taint of hell.
I do not speak of it in such uncertain terms as to...
I understand.
He turned his head to look directly at the veteran.
You speak of the taint as a force which directs us to our foes when he is preoccupied. You speak of it as something tangible, something in the air.
Yes, my lord.
I watched the exchange as if somewhere else entirely, like it was a vidcast being shown to me. The sheer sight of the angel had yet to settle in my mind, and the words on top of it all only served to create a sense of overwhelm which threatened to steal my consciousness out from under me.
Do you feel it now?
The Marine asked, still looking at my friend, who hesitated before responding.
I do, my lord,
he said, his voice trembling.
As do I.
Another flash of light, this time more of a flickering, lit the air around us. In this sudden wash of purple I saw the angel's face unchanged in colour. Dread filled me as he then turned away from us and strode towards the massive boulder which had fallen from his arms when he was struck down.
Endless oaths I have taken to eradicate the filth of the Xenos from the galaxy. Innumerable promises I have made in his name to see the threat of the mutant quelled at every juncture. A myriad pledges
He paused, turning around with his bolter in his arms.
I have made to wipe clean the taint of chaos from the tapestry of his Imperium.
The Marine advanced once more, quicker this time and in my direction. I stumbled, a primal fear gripping my gut and forced me to retreat. My hands clenched and unclenched instinctively, looking for the cold metal of my lasgun. Very quickly I found myself up against the wall where I had been sitting moments before without escape. I began looking around, desperate for a means to explain the sudden animosity of the Marine. Terror chilled me, but ignited my heart, sending it fluttering when my eyes swam around the cave in search of a way to defend myself. My lasgun lay by my pack, yards away and out of reach, but as the Space Marine loomed over me, I knew it would offer me little protection. The fire died, leaving us in darkness save for the tiny aperture which we had been using as a chimney. Bleak, burning light from the charred sky barely served to illuminate anything in the cave beneath the gunship, and the hulk of the sergeant blocked out anything else which would have otherwise reached me.
It is faint, but it is there.
Throne, witness me. I know nothing of what you speak.
Be silent.
The angel looked down at the floor between my feet. In the dust next to where I'd been sitting, I witnessed what I had scrawled in the sand. What had felt to me like the harmless lines and squiggled resolved into a star. A star with 8 points.
Suffer not the heretic to live,
said the veteran from somewhere I couldn't see. The Space Marine leveled his bolter, its gaping barrel threatening to engulf my entire face. The last thing I saw before my soul entered the warp was the sudden eruption of a purple pillar of flame from the embers of the campfire.